Okay, good afternoon. The Committee on Early Learning, Juvenile Justice, Public Education, and First Generation Initiatives is now called to order. Today is May 13th, 2015, and the time is exactly 3 p.m. Thank you very much for being here. So our agenda item here is only one. We have the confirmation hearing for the appointment of Dr. Lisa S. Cooper, nurse, to the Guam Commission for Educator Certification, GCEC, as the school principal/administrator member. Notices for this public hearing were disseminated via hand delivery and emailed to all centers and all main media broadcasting outlets on May 6, 2015 to meet the 5-day notice requirement, and again on May 11, 2015 to meet the 48-hour notice. I want to thank you very much for being here, Dr. Cooper, nurse, and also Ms. Leah Santos. And so with that, I'd like to open up with Ms. Santos giving her testimony.
Honorable Senator Underwood, half a day. My name is Leah Santos, and I'm the Executive Director of the Guam Commission for Educator Certification. I support an appointment of Dr. Lisa Cooper, nurse, to the Guam Commission for Educator Certification. Her nomination meets the requirement of 17 GCA, Chapter 27, Section 27003A2, of Public Law 29-73 for an administrator employed in a public school. There is no doubt that Lisa is an exceptional educator. Since she graduated from UOG 16 years ago, she was first an elementary school teacher for 4 years, then an assistant principal for 2 years, before becoming a principal for the last 10 years. Dr. Cooper, nurse, is currently a principal at Captain H.B. Price Elementary School. In addition, Lisa has been a UOG adjunct professor for the last 2 years and an active member of the Association of Supervision and Curriculum Development. I humbly ask the Legislatura Guahan for your favorable consideration of Dr. Lisa Cooper, nurse's nomination. I am confident she'll provide valuable insight and guidance to the Commission. Thank you, and si Diyos maasi.
And so I'm humbled by the request and the nomination from the Guam Educator Certification Commission, and of course the Governor's Office for recommending me for this position. As Ms. Santos had shared with you, I have been an educator for the last 15 years. I am a current graduate of the University of Guam for both my bachelor's degree and my master's degree. I have a bachelor's degree in education, in elementary education, a master's degree in administration, supervision, and a doctorate in education as well. And I have been employed in the Department of Education for 15 years. I was a teacher in elementary school, and then an assistant principal, and then a principal now. And I think that I'll be able to share my experience and be able to work with the Commission with the perspective of an educator in mind, as an administrator from the schools, from the public schools. I work with certified personnel on a daily basis. Certified personnel, I hold 2 certificates, educator certificates myself, master educator in elementary K-5 for teaching, and master administrator as well for K-12. And so I work very closely with our Human Resources Division in working with making sure that we maintain the certifications of all of our personnel at the school site. So we have a good relationship with Human Resources to ensure that our employees are current with their certifications. In addition, I was also part of putting together the current professional teacher evaluation program that is directly tied with certification. It is related, it is linked together. And so I have some background on the creation of that professional teacher evaluation program and how that works when it comes to recertifying teachers and other educators as well.
Thank you very much. Before I proceed in asking you a question, I think we have Dr. Hendricks. Dr. Hendricks, will you be giving testimony? Oral? Sure. If you could state your name.
Certainly.
Thank you.
I'm Dr. Gail Hendricks. I'm currently the chairperson of the Guam Commission of Educator Certification, and I do apologize for being late. There's traffic in the south, if you can believe.
Well, traffic all around. The south is not exempt.
Not anymore. Yeah. I'm here to speak in favor of the nomination of Dr. Lisa Cooper-Nurse. I've worked with her for the past 5 years in my capacity as the Field Experience Coordinator at the University of Guam. I find her very much on top of things. She knows her business. She's cooperative, helpful, and she's reasonable. And I think that those are important qualities for anyone who sits on the commission. We are currently going through a struggle, and hopefully that will be resolved. And the mere fact that she's willing to step up and be a part of the commission at this time says a lot for her integrity and her professionalism. And I would very much like to continue working with Dr. Cooper-Nurse in another capacity as on the commission.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for making the effort to support her nomination. Dr. Cooper-Nurse, I want to thank you, first of all, for your service to the Department of Education. You and I have worked together not only as co-administrators when I was there as Administrator of Research, Planning, and Evaluation, but also later on as when I was a superintendent. And I've always been impressed with your dedication, your commitment, not only to our students, but to the professional growth of your employees, especially our teachers. So I thank you on behalf of the people of Guam for your service. I also thank you for accepting the nomination, because during this first startup of the GCEC Guam, okay, let me make sure I'm clear on the acronym. Not very good with acronyms. Guam Commission for Educator Certification. You do know the different controversies and so on as they have tried to implement and pass into law the standards for teachers. So I am glad that you're willing to jump into the fire, and I have no doubt that this will be resolved and would only make the mission of GCEC stronger as we go through these differences of opinion or perspectives. Just to you, what are, based on your experience as a first-time nominee to any commission or board, I just want to ask, what do you think the 3 top policy concerns are for GCEC in light of your current experience in DOE as a principal?
Well, I think first and foremost is that the issue of initial certification for teachers, I think, is definitely an issue. And I don't know if it's really an issue of GEC, EC, or if it's more an issue of Department of Education. But for an initial educator, the requirement is to have a mentor. And a lot of times, of course, the hope and, of course, the mission of the Department of Education is to make sure that we retain teachers. And so the initial educator certification requires that there be 1 year of mentoring for teachers before they can move on to renew their certificate, with the 3 years. But sometimes we're not catching those teachers and mentoring them at the time that's most crucial, which is really their first year. Yes. And so, that's kind of a concern, and I know that's kind of not really a GCEC concern. They're given time. 3 years is a good time, but it really is a concern because we're not catching them early enough. And then by the time we do provide the mentoring service to the teacher, sometimes a teacher says, well, where were you when I needed you last year or the year
Right.
before? I've figured it out, and I found another way to be supported. And so there are some concerns with that. And so I think maybe as a commission, we may want to just kind of look at that. I mean, I think that they give a good leeway and a good cushion for Department of Education to provide that mentoring. But we got to look back and say, really, why is the mentoring required? And so kind of just look at that. Another priority is definitely the law in terms of the code of conduct for teachers and educators, certified personnel. And I know that that's one that's a really big pressing issue right now, and I know that's something that the GCEC will have to tackle. I definitely feel that there needs to be some sort of code of conduct, code of ethics for educators. There needs to be. We're professionals. Educators are professionals. But at the same time, I think that it needs to be reasonable at the same time. And so I think kind of taking a look at that law and seeing where we can work together and compromise to come to a consensus on what we expect from our educators and how we will be able to address those issues that come up. And also taking a look at the policies that we have already in place with Department of Education, because we don't want to punish people twice for situations. And so that's the second one. And then the third one would probably just be, and I know that we look at certification in terms of our professionals, but also we can start looking at maybe providing other kinds of certification for educators that we don't provide already, like for example our substitute teachers or our teaching assistants that we have. Many of them are working towards education. They're working on their degrees to become educators, and if there's some sort of certificate that we could provide them to say that they are qualified enough to be in the classroom with the students, because there are some times throughout the school year, throughout the day, that the teaching assistants are with the students alone.
Right.
And it's within all allowable guidelines. But when teachers step out sometimes during the workday for professional development, for their professional learning community time, the teaching assistant takes over. And we want to be able to say that that person is qualified and is certified in some sort of way. And so maybe if there's something that we can look at to address, to work toward that as well, so that we can let the public know that the students that are with us and the teachers and the personnel who are educating their students, even when the certified teacher is not there, is a qualified person.
Okay, very good. Very good. Very good enumeration of the critical areas. I want to go back to your first concern, which has to do with the mentorship that is required. I do agree with that concept in a way, based on my personal experience, because when I first became a teacher, it happened to be that time when there was a strike. So that was 1980-81. And so I didn't have a master teacher per se. I was already working as a limited term teacher, and there was a term for that. When you are actually working, but you don't have a master teacher. I forgot. Internship. Yeah, I was an intern, and so it was for the whole year. And I had my principal, Mrs. Roberto, at that time, but it was really at a very, very turbulent time, so I didn't have the kind of guidance, because UOG professors were also engaged in they didn't want to cross the line, so I was actually left there. But that's to the extreme, right? Because you know how scary the first year is. But you just know, going back as a first-time teacher, how stressful it is, because all of a sudden, all of those things, the theories that you're putting into practice, are not always working, and it's very different when you're alone in the classroom. So that mentorship provides that guided practice, the additional guided practice for the teacher during that first year. So if it's not within the purview of this GCEC, is that now under the purview and the responsibility is now with the Department of Education for that mentorship program?
It has always been with DOE. It's
Okay.
DOE that established the program. I
Right.
believe they use a federal grant to do when they originally put it in place to train the mentors. Their
Okay.
problem is they don't have enough mentors. So
Okay.
it becomes a catch-up game.
Yeah.
So rather than doing the mentorship on the first year, which is the ideal situation, they're trying to catch them on the third year. And sometimes
not
they miss
working.
it. So what happens is they have to come, because once you're in an initial, you cannot renew that. So you have to move to a professional. So the only other option is to request for an extension from our office. So we have no choice but to grant it because it's not really their fault.
Right. So it isn't, it's not a funding issue, it's the availability of mentors?
I
Is
think
that
they're both.
both?
Because they said they
Dr.
have to be
Hendricks?
trained,
Okay.
and then there's a funding problem.
Okay, funding problem because it's federally funded right now.
No, the original federal funding was just to train the mentor.
Okay.
So it's a local fund.
Okay.
So and then number two, they don't have enough mentors.
Okay.
When the program first began, there were, I believe it was 15 mentors. So during the grant period, which was part of Project HATSA, there were 15, and they were able to handle the entire load that of first-year teachers. But when the grant was terminated, then there was local funding, and they were only given enough funding for 5. So 5 have been trying for the last, since 2008, the last 5 have been trying to handle the entire load of initial educators. Now, Dawn Bloss, who is the chair of, or of the mentoring program, she said that they have written a grant, and they're hopeful that they'll be able to expand their mentoring program for next year. Because it is considered a teaching position, then retirees would be eligible to fill in some of those
good.
positions,
Yeah.
which would be, in my estimation, an excellent opportunity to get people with 30 or more years of experience working with these youngsters that are just coming out. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. The local funding is not enough, and so they have kind of backed off on looking for people to accept when they get a vacancy within the mentoring program.
Okay, so in light of the new teachers that we get every year, the 15 was sufficient? The
Yes, it
15
was working. Actually, it was working quite
actually
well.
worked out. Okay,
10 to 12 mentees each.
Yeah.
yes.
And the interesting thing, you would have to speak with either Dr. Navis Flores or Dr. Aline Yamashita, because they were the two that were most closely working with the mentoring program. But I believe that we showed in the first year of the program, I can't tell you the second and third year, we had a 100% retention.
Yeah, that is just so important during the first. I just know that, and while you try to catch up the second or third year, after the first year, my experience, I was really burnt out. My body really gave way because of the extra stress of crossing the thicket every day, but it was just not knowing, you're just really not sure whether you're doing things the right way. Well, the instructional leader is there, but you're not getting that immediate feedback and the guided, I call it guided practice, and that's just a source of encouragement, primarily a source of encouragement, because I was really hard on myself during that first year. I just felt like I wasn't doing, but the principals seemed to think I was, but it's just very important. So I'll look into that. That's very good.
The other thing that's kind of falling through the crack right now is the mentoring for the special education teachers. That's another problem we have.
Okay.
Because they're not a classroom teacher, a lot of them are like going from school to school, right?
Is this the itinerant teachers, like for example your
special ed.
the special ed? We do have the resource room teachers who are like permanent, right?
No, this one's the ones that I've dealt with recently is a problem with a person who goes from school to school.
Consulting resource
Right.
teachers,
So the
CRTs.
it kind of fell through the crack because supposedly before it was dealt with directly by special ed,
Yes.
but now it's no. She fell through the crack because they didn't do the mentorship, so now it got thrown into the regular mentorship program, and so I had to give her an extension because she needs a whole year, and special ed didn't take care of her, and it's too late for her to go through the mentorship program. So that's an issue that has to be fixed too, is who's going to mentor the special ed teachers.
Because ideally, that would be, ideally, there, like for example, for speech and language, when you have a new therapist, they do identify those who already have had experience to not so much mentor them, but to sign off on their evaluation and kind of like provide them that guidance. For the, I don't know if it has changed, but for the consulting resource teachers, usually those who get assigned to that are those who already have had some experience in the resource room as resource room teachers, and then they're actually case management. But I'll talk with you about that as a sidebar just so that I have a better understanding about what that, that specific issue. Okay, thank you for that. The other thing that I wanted to further ask you about is I won't address the code of ethics for teachers because there's an ongoing lawsuit, and I don't want to put you in a position as a new member or, to be confirmed. So we'll leave that one alone. But I appreciate your comments about making sure that we balance the need for us for accountability and the professionalism, along with the need for us to provide fair and equitable, a fair evaluation, a code of ethics. And I understand the issues there. The other types of educator certification for teacher assistants is a matter of interest to me because I do know that the teacher assistants have been with the teachers, and they actually know the lessons because they have to assist, and they also know the class. So rather than hire a substitute, right, a lot of times if it's just like a half day that they have to take over, then it's been practiced to have them take over. So what you're asking is whether we should have certification for the teacher assistants equivalent to the substitute, to the ones that we provide to the substitute, or just explain that to me what you really meant.
I'm thinking that maybe even more.
Sorry.
Okay. I'm thinking maybe even more. Our substitute teachers and our teaching assistants go through a similar training. When they are hired every summer, they go through like a week-long training, how to handle disruptive students, basic classroom management, a couple of hours of that. And how to write a lesson plan or how to read a lesson plan, for example. And so they do get basic training on those types of things. But this might be a nice segue to some of these teaching assistants who sometimes this is their first job. are, most of them are very young, right out of high school. And this might be a nice segue if we could offer them some sort of certification, take a couple of courses, and then this might be a nice way to get them right into teaching. We do have a teacher shortage right now.
Encourage them to go into teaching
Right, and
profession.
several of them have. We could probably encourage even more of them. And they work longer than even the teachers do because they also tutor during the after-school program Aspire. And so they have so much experience in working with the kids already. They help administer our assessments, our school assessments, our district assessments. And so if there's a way that, or if there's some sort of way where, we can look at maybe even the commission offering some sort of certification for these folks. Definitely it's not a full bachelor's degree requirement, but just if we had a program for them to go through to be able to say that they're even more marketable or they're more qualified to be in the position that they're in. Just an idea.
Okay.
The teaching assistants are, though, federally funded employees through the Consolidated Grant and DOE, and I don't know where that's at when it comes to plans for keeping them, or if local funds will take over in that area. But they are funded through the Consolidated Grant. Yeah.
Do they get credits for these, the training that they get? I mean, that they receive with the teachers?
No, at this time they don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's something that you could perhaps bring up with the commission, right? But I understand what you mean. I'm just not sure how to go about, how that would be done. I think that's better served when you're a member of the commission that you can then bring that up. But I understand what you're saying about that. Do you have any questions? Okay. Okay. You've actually provided quite a bit of information about initiatives that we can pay attention to, and some of the issues that we have to pay attention to relative to the quality of support and services that we provide to our teachers, and also quality teaching. So. Anything else, Ms. Leah and Dr. Hendricks? Okay, well, you know what? This has been a very, I don't have any more questions, so I just want to thank you, all three of you, and thank you again, Lisa, for stepping up and accepting the nomination in addition to your responsibility as a principal and also as a mother, because it can be very complicated. Leah, do you have something? Yes.
I just wanted to thank for the hearing. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So again, Sijus Maasi for your testimony. There being no additional individuals to present testimony, the confirmation hearing on the appointment of Dr. Lisa Cooper Nurse to GCEC is now concluded. The committee will continue to accept testimony until 5 p.m. May 20th. 2015 testimonies may be submitted to the Guam Legislature, 155 Hessler Place, Hagatna, via email at cipo@guamlegislature.org or via fax at 671-969-0975. The public hearing is now adjourned, and the time is 3:29 p.m. Thank you very much.
Thank you.